reminder, he's the VP of Corporate Development for Thor Exploration, with over 20 years experience in the Middle East and Nigeria, working on mining and metals investment banking. Then we have Ana Lucia Lind, who is quite a transnational being. She's Colombian, but studied in Germany and is now operating out of Switzerland as an investment banker, a philanthropist. Well, she's the CEO of Swiss Financial Engineering, so she wears quite a lot of hats, and she particularly advises governments on large-scale infrastructure projects and a variety of other projects. So we have Ana Lucia. Then we have Lisa Schlegel, who is the VP for BMO Capital Markets investment banking team here in London. Lisa has been involved in quite a lot of advisory deals, especially with De Beers' acquisition of the Peregrine mine diamonds. And just a note that Lisa is quite pivotal to Women in Mining UK, because with her we have BMO Capital's support for the 100 Global Inspirational Women in Mining publication, which you can get downstairs after this panel. And then finally we have Nicole McCulloch, who is the managing partner at Clifton Hill Associates. This is a global executive search firm and advisory firm, specializing mostly in energy and natural resources, but not limited to the field. And Nicole has had quite a lot of experience talking on governance and talent management, especially being the former MD for Women in Mining UK. She comes with quite a lot of experience. And I must say that she was recently nominated or listed as one of the top 100 influential people in African mining. So kudos to her. And finally, as I said, my name is Stacey Ho. I'm an anthropologist, strangely enough, but I come into this session as someone who works in development, particularly for the multilateral development banks and organizations such as the World Bank and UN, working on partnerships between large-scale mining companies and artisanal miners, just to name one of the things. And I do come with a gender diversity platform, but today's panel on good governance and diversity, I'd like to challenge the panel to think of diversity from not just gender, although that for us is one of the most important aspects of gender, of diversity, but I'd like to challenge the panel to think of diversity from also an age perspective and also educational background. How do we get an anthropologist into the conversation of good governance? So we'll be very brief, well, not very brief, because it's a very important topic, but I'd like to start off the conversation with looking at good governance and what does that mean? What does that look like? Not just to the majors, but to junior mining companies, and how do we correlate good governance with diversity? So I'd like to start maybe from an investment angle. What do investors look for when we measure diversity and good governance?
Well, I think I actually would like to make reference to the UK Corporate Governance Code, which basically kind of lays out the best practices in for a company to implement systems to be managed and directed, and that is for sure a reference point also for investors in what way companies comply with these kind of best practices. And this code actually stresses the importance of a board to have, I think they say, a diversity of values. So they basically don't necessarily pinpoint to gender or to education, but they clarify that it is important for making good decisions for a company and for all the stakeholders involved to have just like a very big diversity in terms of all kinds of values. And I mean, I think one nice picture, which I also I've come across in the past, and which I thought was very relevant, is to see diversity kind of as an iceberg. I mean, you have a top layer which is visible to everyone, and gender is a very obvious one, but you have all sorts of different areas as well, like marital status or education or family background, anything. So having women also on boards kind of gives you a higher probability of just having a wider range of different values, and that ultimately should lead to to a better corporate governance. And I mean, there's a whole body of research saying that actually companies which are diverse in their board composition have ultimately also a better financial result.
I do agree that companies internationally need to have good governance. But as a woman in business, as an entrepreneur, as a financial advisor, international banker, my close association to government and to business from the smallest part of the world, and I never use diminutive, but throughout the world, I think we are facing at the moment a huge and major mistakes. We are looking into gender to create a scenario where we should focus on education, and the key is to get into the footpath. No matter who they are. I was born on a very small island, 50,000 inhabitants, and I'm living throughout the world. Good governance will never place me in that position because I will have needed somebody all of the time in my favor to say, because you're a woman, because you're a female, you deserve that opportunity. So I do think what we all need in good governance is motivation. Motivation is the path. How do I motivate someone to stay into business and stay focused to be a winner? European Union has created a new record law, a top quote of women in business. We just saw it in Germany. The chairman of the Social Party fell on her face. We're going to charge men for that. We cannot talk in this way. I never, ever participate in that social discussion because I do think success is come from your vision and it's not where you have been, it's where you're heading to. So when I talk to my kids throughout the world, and I say my kids because I have 7,000 kids that I support throughout the world or more, is that we need to focus on our education. And if we educate a child, we do not have to chastise a man. And our society today, in terms of economy, is being penalized because education has been taken away from girls and boys. On my side, I lost my dad when I was 10 years old, and it's the first time ever in my life I'm talking such things in public. It was not a motivation, it was a must for me to lift my head and to go forward, to say I want to be somebody for my family. And today, sadly, I don't have a kid, but I have all of those kids out there to say, if somebody opened the door, let go in. And as a banker in Germany, Switzerland, Dubai, UK, I don't think anyone here is going to accuse me for being successful and sit on the panel with you guys. But everybody will penalize me for all of the time creating a discussion and trying to be a female in business.
So are you seeing that there is equal motivation through the genders, and maybe if not, both men and women are motivated to come to senior or board level roles, then maybe Nicole can answer in terms of the talent management. How are we finding a lot of women who are interested in taking up senior level and board level roles, and how are we measuring good governance through this conversation?
Thank you, Stacey. I think the first answer is yes. I mean, the talent for boards and executive hires in the mining industry from a gender perspective is quite high, and there's a lot of really strong talent out there. I mean, I think we have to almost take the conversation back a little bit and go back to what does good corporate governance actually mean, and why do we have it? And I think for me, it's threefold. Is, you're looking at good corporate governance to give you strong commercial sustainability, making sure that you're performing ethically in the jurisdictions that you're operating in, and allowing you more access to capital. I think, Lisa sort of touched on it from an ESG perspective. Pension funds, institutional investors are very wary of our sector. And you look at what Norway's doing, pulling out of funds that have coal in it. So, we as a sector actually need to be demonstrating to the investment community that we're modern and forward thinking, and actually, we're looking at these corporate governance pieces. Just a little antidote, I was speaking at a very similar topic a couple months ago. I'm someone from a different sector who sells the hand dryers in bathrooms. They rolled out this amazing new hand dryer globally, and they rolled it out and it was great. And come to find out that the hand dryer doesn't work for dark skin. So if you weren't Caucasian and you put your hand under the sensor of this dryer, it did not work. Now, looking back at their board, it was all white. If you look at their executive team, it was all white. And perhaps maybe had they looked at their board being diverse, representing their stakeholders, not their shareholders, and they had people on the board from the jurisdictions in which they were sending these hand dryers to, they could have saved themselves billions of dollars, and reputational damage, which we all know in this industry, isn't actually quantifiable. So corporate governance and diversity is all about risk mitigation. And we're not talking, gender diversity is a big thing, but it's perspective, it's age. You mentioned age. I'm 35 years old. I chair a board filled with 9 men who are all at least 20 years older than me. I put a different perspective around that boardroom table, and I ask different questions. And I think fundamentally, the demand for investors is not going to go away for good corporate governance. And if we look at the UK Corporate Governance Code, it is demanding that companies not only have more diverse boards, but actually looking at culture, vision, and values. And I think we as an industry also need to remember that it's a privilege to be listed on these stock exchanges. It is not your right as a company. If you want to behave in certain ways, you can remain a private organization. But if you want to be listed, you need to do better, and you need to really ensure that actually you're being compliant with the codes in which you've signed up for.
What about codes that operate outside of developed economies? So, for example, outside of the UK, I should say. So, for example, looking to the Middle East or Nigeria, for example, how are we seeing corporate governance from the company perspective aligning with the local governments?
I think that's a very good starting point. I think if we look at corporate governance aspect from an industry perspective, and we say, how has the corporate governance model evolved over time, particularly in the extractive industry sector? We tend to see it's been very, very reactive. It's been focused on misrepresentation, focused on fraud, focused on corruption, and therefore the corporate governance model has therefore evolved very much on a compliance basis. And I think that's where it's wrong. I think that's where it's just not enough. And the best companies go far beyond compliance with regulation and legislation. And what do we see with that proactive nature? Proactive nature is to take governance, not just look at it from a board perspective, and this includes governance and diversity as well. Not just from a board perspective, but something that is embedded throughout the company from the top level all the way down to the bottom level. And then to take that forward with that in mind, and training that's embedded within your organization to every relationship you have with local stakeholders, whether it be the local communities, local state governments, and the national government. And it's to behave in the way that is throughout the organization.
So it's actually quite topical that we're speaking about this, because recently Newmont Goldcorp was named one of 100 best corporate citizen companies in the world, and they were only one of 2 mining companies listed on this list, and they were 20th on the list, which was seen as quite a milestone for the mining sector. Now, like Newmont, we are seeing companies exhibiting best practice in how to bring in diversity to their corporate governance, and not just from a board level or a senior management level, but making it part of their corporate culture. It would be interesting being people who have worked throughout Africa and the Middle East, but also in other jurisdictions outside of the topic today. It would be interesting to hear what are some of the best practices you're seeing, and why are we seeing these companies thriving when it comes to good corporate governance?
I mean, I think actually I've got notes on Newmont because I don't think it's an accident that Newmont's board is 58% female, has a female chair. And when you look at local jurisdictions like in Ghana, 50% of their senior leadership are Ghanaians and 87% of their local management are Ghanaians. So there, for me, is a direct correlation there. In terms of best practice, I think the biggest issue facing this industry that we just generally don't talk about because we're talking about finance and social license to operate is talent. We will run out of talent in this industry quite quickly if we're not an attractive employer to the generations that are coming up. And I think the reason why a company like Newmont is able to have those successes is because they look like a modern, attractive company in which people want to work for. It's not just about diversity, it's about inclusion. It's about the people that work for those companies having a voice and a say. It's not relegating their local African talent to Africa. It's promoting them to Denver. It's bringing them into the corporate office and sending them back into the communities to be role models. And I think if we can continue to do things like that in the industry, we will be okay on a talent perspective. But unfortunately, there's not enough companies like Newmont who are actually practicing what they preach.
And Lisa, do you have any examples?
Yeah, I think that a key important thing is that basically the top management talks about these topics and actually really addresses them, maybe in in Monday morning meetings or in their annual report, or if they attend some sort of events. I think that sort of just portrays that they practice what they preach. I think that is a very important thing. And then on the other hand side, I think also maybe looking at it more from a smaller level is to put programs in place where women or other diverse groups are actively supported by. So for example, mentorship programs or sponsorship programs. And I think those in particular also help the point which Anna raised earlier, the motivation. I think it's very important to motivate. I'm giving the example of the women within the organizations to stay within the organization and to kind of have role models at the top level. And I think that is kind of a key point to target to keep those women motivated, and that can be done through programs where actually their particular or their specific issues are addressed.
On my part, I think as well, in the government and the government end, if you take a Ministry of Mining and Energy, they should set aside the capital and asset for good governance, meaning creating and stimulating students to go study engineering. I mean, if you study economy, you could become a banker and a financial. But if you study finance, it's difficult to become an engineer in mining. So if you stimulate your population to understand if you are good at something, and best example, let's go back India. At the moment, everybody could look at India to see technology as one of the key issues for the population, rising from poverty into a next level. And through all Africa, we go there, one of the richest nations in the world in natural resources, and we discuss good governance. Fantastic. Does that help the population? No way. So I go and talk to the ministers, and I say, listen, put your budget aside. We need to create entrepreneurship based on stimulation of students, of studies. So you're going to give tutorship to the best student from one of your local schools to go to the UK, or go to New Zealand, go to Australia, or take the example from the Middle East. You put your budget and send your student abroad to study and come back and implement know-how, and then you have technology, then you bring in your resource of investment. But just discussing all of the time how we get to the part, no, let's do it together. All of us here could do something. You have been named the best women in mining in the industry. Let's go to Africa together. We talk to the government. So only if we take the challenge and do it, we could reach it. I don't base on theory. I never dream in my dreams because I don't have dreams. I live the dreams. So when I talk about something, I go to the government and I place it, zero cost, and I say to them, let's do it together. And there's somebody who's going to pick up me, and everybody from right to left, and everyone in this room could be participant. Tomorrow, we will have 3 girls here who will come back 5 years later and tell us, wow, we did it. So this topic is a rollout to reach target and to reach government.
And are you seeing any governments in particular who are working quite well in implementing what you have just stated?
There is a lot of government, and the thing is, they're still understated, they're still backward, because in Africa, we live the key, this is my cousin, this is my friend, he's the minister, please help him, help her. No, you're a student, you're a good student, we do it. I have 2 government who I could mention. I will not do it because of fairness, but it was a hell of a problem to say to them, listen, the queue is long, and you're not the best student. So go back, get the motivation. This kid has no shoes, just like you, but he's a good student. He has got this scholarship. He is going to go to that university. So all of us, instead of saying, we have to help, and Africa is poor, no. We go and we do it. So we roll out the program, we take example, you could copy paste it. It don't have to take much, but you could incentivize your government to get it going. And if I goes to Africa and all of us earn our money there as we earn it in Europe, then let's give something back. So we have to incentivize those companies who are there to give something in return. 5 scholarship per company, can you imagine? We will have 50 students per year going abroad and becoming great professionals.
And I think you've hit a very integral point in the fact that we do need companies to really embrace different projects or initiatives such as sponsorship. And Africa is one of the wealthiest regions in the world, not only for mineral resources, but also when it comes to talent. And coming from a project development side, how are we seeing this talent manifesting into the current gold project that you're working on?
Well, I think the point that Anna raises is spot on. To go back to the base educational level and then to promote students as they go forwards. We're very fortunate actually in Nigeria in that the very well developed oil and gas industry has meant that there are a large number of well-trained people. There's a transferability of skills from one industry to another for us. And we've been able to bring on, in this instance, for example, some very highly skilled women into our organisation at a very early stage in the project development cycle. We're not a major mining company with infinite resources. So everybody has to pull their weight. The nice thing is people want to pull their weight. People want to be seen to be doing things. And that's obviously of critical importance to us. In terms of the scholarship programs, again, we have a CDA process we go through, where we do sponsor children from local communities, and that follows through to high school and above. Could we do more? Yes, we probably could do more. I think it is down to mining companies to do as much as they can. But to take into cognizance that mining companies cannot transplant government. There is government responsibility. What mining companies can do is to support government initiatives.
And how do governments then maybe hinder or put forward a good governance and the ability to actually practice with sustainable and environmental and good governance strategies? How does the government play a significant role for thor exploration?
That's quite a big question.
Loaded one.
So the government sets the structure. They are the enabling factor for the mining business to thrive. And the mining business feeds that back by promoting or by developing opportunities, providing employment, working with all of our local stakeholders, as well as our government stakeholders as well. So I think in this respect, it's a symbiotic relationship between government and the mining industry, and also the education.
We've talked about how you can, best practices and how we've seen the mining industry actually taking on board good governance through a diversity portfolio. But the industry is still quite slow to uptake a diversity strategy within their corporate governance. Why do you think that's so? And maybe let's start from the talent management perspective. What are some of the challenges?
In terms of, I'll start with the why, and this might not be a popular opinion, but I think it's just pure laziness. The talent is in our industry, the women, the ethnic diversity is in our industry, but organizations are still hiring the same types of individuals who perhaps would have been relevant 20 years ago, or perhaps are relevant today, but might not be serving their industry or our industry in the long term. So I think that we have to hold companies accountable who aren't doing the right thing. And when you're hiring, it's ensuring that your hiring strategy and the people who are making those decisions aren't hiring just the people that they know. You have to ask yourself the question, is the person you're hiring the best person you know, or is the best person in the industry to do the job? And I guarantee you, as much as people like to think they know absolutely everyone in this industry because they've been working in it for 30, 40 years, I can promise you that you don't. And what you think might be best might not be what's best for the company going forward. So I think unbiased, transparent search processes for executive and board hires are the absolute minimum that we should be doing as an industry. And if we can get that right, if we can get that top level right, the bottom part will take care of itself. But unfortunately, at the minute, we're putting a Band-Aid over a bullet hole because we're just fixing the board stuff. But actually, in 10, 15 years' time, we have no one coming through. We start with 50% gender diversity at a very bottom level, and it all just goes away. Because as much as it's a good thing to say, let's give scholarships to students and things, that's wonderful. But actually, when those students enter our industry, are they included? Are they being taken care of? Are they going to mine sites and being sexually assaulted? Because these are real issues that women still face in our industry, and as uncomfortable as it is, we have to address them because we can bring them in, but actually, we want them to stay.
So just to follow up, and actually maybe just to end the conversation, what then could companies, especially junior mining companies, then do to make the industry more attractable to a more diverse group of people, and how can they make it more inclusive? And I'd like to pose this question to the entire panel, and maybe Nicole, you can just continue from what you said.
It's a really big question, and the red light's flashing, so I feel under pressure to give a succinct answer. I just think we have to keep trying, and actually we need to promote the good things we do. The mining industry is amazing, and the future of the world is dependent on what we're doing in Africa, in the Middle East, in South America, and we need to tell our story about all of the benefits that our industry brings, as opposed to constantly getting negative press. We need to be better as an industry, promoting why we're so great.
And Lisa?
I think the one thing I would say is support the women you already have in your team, and I think really invest in them so that they can grow through the seniority pipeline. I think that's for me the one big one.
And Anna?
I will always say, gender will never count in my mind. Success is my path, and whenever I have that on my screen, nothing counts. I'm always going forward, and if I should take my backward in gender and diversity, it will not be in color, it will not be in religion, it will not be in culture. It's just going to be forward how I want to be included. I have got the hardest lesson in my life, being a banker in Germany, starting there to be my training program. I could tell you all story to cry, but that is never going to make me who I am here sitting. So I wanted to be who I want to be, and I embraced every opportunity. So I will never be invited to talk about the diversity of inclusion or of good governance and diversity of female and male. Talk to me about Ana Lucia Watson-Smith, Ana Lucia Watson-Lynch, and the woman is in business, in finance, and sitting in Dubai, sitting in the next airplane, and giving this example to all of my kids. And that's what I embrace in the world. I want to give what I have received as motivation back home to be a successful person free from theory, and wait on me in Nigeria, I'm coming to get you. I'm going to get out of your company, my scholarship for my kids. That's what I'm looking for. So we're not going to discuss female and male. That's important. So look for me next month. I'm in Nigeria. Be prepared. My business card will be given you.
Wonderful perspective. And James?
Yeah, that's very good. So I think the key thing. I'm going to
We really put him on the spot.
go off a complete tangent on this. I think the key thing for us is local employment in the countries that we operate. That's our starting point. From then, it's equal opportunities in every respect. We will support all of our employees, regardless of any aspect of diversity. However, I think that everybody should recognise in life that demographic is 50% female, and this has to, over time, become the norm in our industry.
Well, thank you everyone for a very interesting panel, to say the least, but very, very relevant, not only to the majors, but also to the junior mining companies. So I know that we don't have much time for questions. So we have no time for questions, but of course we encourage everyone to approach the panel during the lunch break. Probably a better forum to ask questions. So thank you so much, and let's give a round of applause.